Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. In this video, we're going to be launching our brand new Yixing Zisha clay teapot, and we're going to be testing its capabilities against our other teaware by overclocking some canopy flasher Gu Shu Raw PuErh tea. Here it is. This is our Chunda shape Yixing clay teapot. This is fully handmade. So we've got a fully handmade Zisha clay teapot, about 130 ml, so an amazing size. We all know you like those small teapots out there. It's been a long time coming, I'm sure you'll agree. So let me tell you a little bit about the story of this teapot. So, as you may know, we already have a Yixing clay teapot. This is a half handmade clay teapot, a really great affordable way into Yixing clay made with good quality clay. I've done a video all about this teapot and Zisha in general. I'll put links in the description below, and another video all about how to prepare your Zisha clay teapot. I'll put link for that in the description below. I've also done a video comparing all of these different clays and tokoname clay with various different tea types to give you my opinion on which clays are best suited for particular teas. I'll put a link in the description below so you can geek dive into that if you want. But today, what I want to focus on is the story of this teapot, Yixing clay, and then we're going to be seeing how good this clay is compared to other teaware. So, as I said, it's been a long time coming. The reason for that is Yixing clay is so complex and full of misinformation, fakery, and mythology. So, generalizations, we'll give you the broad strokes first. Yixing clay is highly sought after, probably the most highly sought after clay in teaware. All Yixing clay is known as Zisha, and then you can break down Zisha into different types depending on the ore that is produced. There's Zerni, which is purple. There's Duenni, which can be yellow all the way to black. There's Hongni or Juni, which is red. And you know, there's lots of complexity depending on the ores, depending on which part of the mountain, which mines. It's very, very, very complex. I'll probably be doing another video all about that in the future. But just generalizations, Yixing is the broad category, Yixing Zisha, and then it's split up into Duenni, Juni, and Zerni. Now, the quality or the desirability of a Yixing clay pot is dependent on a few general factors. The first and the most important is the quality of the clay. In other words, where did that ore come from and how was it processed? So, there are some original mines in Yixing. The original mines are the ones where all of the original Zisha was mined from. And those mines are still active, although they are very restricted in terms of the access to them. Some people say that Zisha is extinct, especially Juni. Zisha is extinct. I have received conflicting reports from my contacts in Yixing saying no, it's still about and it can still be mined, but it's very, very restricted. So the origin of the clay is very important. And then after that, how the ores are processed to create the clay. And very importantly, the clay should go through some aging or fermenting process. This is leaving the clay in water or a damp environment for many years. And the reason for this aging or fermenting process is that it increases the porosity and plasticity of the clay itself, which means it's easier to work. It's going to make a more resilient clay teapot with less cracking in it. And also, they say that as it ages and it ferments, when you finally make tea in that teapot, it will have a stronger effect and it will season and it will affect the tea in a different way. So, the quality of the clay, the origin of the ores, and how the ores have been processed into clay and fermented or aged. That's the first criteria when judging quality of Yixing. The second is how the teapot was actually made. The most common commodity way of making the cheaper Yixing clay teaware is through injection moulding. Essentially, you're taking a liquefied clay, which is then injected into molds that are created. And those molds can be very good or very bad, depending on, the level of detail in crafting those molds. But then after that, the clay solidifies, and then it's sort of finished and shaped, and that tends to produce the commodity teaware out there. It's not necessary to say that that means it's terrible, terrible teaware. You know, it still has function. If they're using decent material at the beginning, then you can produce decent teaware, but through liquefying the clay, you're adding additives that are going to affect the performance of the clay. The second way of making the clay teaware is half handmade, which is what this teapot is here. Half handmade again uses molds, but is using clay, solid clay, and the craftsman is essentially banging and tapping the clay into these molds. So they're using a predefined shape, again, can be very good quality or very low quality. And in fact, because these molds are, you know, a one-time thing, you often find that you get very nice fitted, you know, tight fitting lids and nice fitted teaware because they're taking their time to make sure that that mold is really, really well done. And then they can hammer and bang the clay into the molds, and that creates this half handmade teaware. I would say that for most standards, that is handmade because it's made by hands, but they're using tools and molds. Right, top of the list, of course, is fully handmade. Fully handmade means no molds. This is done by somebody who's a real expert, who knows the shape of the teaware that they're going to produce like instinct, and they are creating it just from clay, just clay and hands and a few little tools, but no molds involved. So this is a half handmade Yixing clay teapot, and this is a fully handmade clay teapot. The third criteria that affects the quality, desirability, and price of Yixing clay teaware is who actually made it. And you've got different tiers from sort of very, very basic craftsmen all the way to level 1 craftspeople, all the way to level 5. So level 1 means that you can make a fully handmade teapot. It means that you have to have certain art qualifications, and you need to have about 7 years worth of experience working with Zisha clay. Level 2 means that you've got 15 years experience. Obviously you need to have made lots of handmade pots, and there are other things that are required, like there needs to be some awards that are given by local municipalities for your work, or if your work is being collected. So there are other criteria, but generally 15 years of experience will lead you into level 2. Level 3 is 20 years, level 4 is 25 years. And if you have had 30 years or more experience making Zisha clay teaware, and you've got lots of awards and your teaware is being collected and you've got lots of qualifications, then you may get up to level 5, which is the absolute pinnacle of teaware certification. So those are the main 3 criteria that determine the quality and price of Yixing clay teaware. Obviously different clay types also command different prices, like Dueni and Juni is usually more expensive than Zerni, but that's the story for another video. But all of these criteria can be faked. The origin of the ores, how the clay was processed, if it was aged, how it was made, who made it, all of this can be faked, and there is so much fakery out there, which is why it has taken us so long to buy in another Yixing clay teapot. So what we've been doing over the years is we've been selecting teaware. I've been buying teaware from various different craftsmen in Yixing, testing them out, trying them out, and sort of getting to know the differences between the clays, trying to sort of sort the wheat from the chaff in the same way as we do with tea. And when I was sent this teapot, I really fell in love with the performance of the clay itself. And that is why I purchased it, the performance of the clay. So everything that I'm going to tell you about this teapot is, I believe, to be true, but I cannot verify it 100%. But what I do know is that I love the performance of this clay. So let's go through it. This is a Zerni, so it's made from purple clay. The ores to create the clay for this teapot were from Huang Long Mountain mine, supposedly. So they're made from Zerni ores sourced from Huang Long Mountain mine, which is one of the most sought after mines in Yixing. Now, again, lots of people say that their ores come from Huang Long Mountain because of the fact that it has such a reputation. However, the craftsperson, and I'll talk to you about her in a minute, who sourced and then made this teaware is adamant that this is from Huang Long Shan. I cannot verify that, but that is what I have been told. And we're going to talk about her in a little bit and her accolades and whether or not we can rely on her. So, Huang Long Shan, the clay itself has been aged for 30 plus years. This is very, very important. Huang Long Shan is a restricted mine. There's very little mining going on there. Apparently it still happens, but it's not so much. And so all of the clays that come from Huang Long Shan mine, if you're going to have a supply of it, it will usually be old. And this supposedly has been fermented for 30 years in Yixing and then sourced by the craftsman to make this teapot. So old clay, that's why we're calling it Lao Zerni. So old Zerni clay, which is going to affect the performance, of course, compared to this one here, which is going to be much, much fresher. So that's the clay and the ores. The making style, this is fully handmade. So this is not half handmade. This is full handmade. This is made purely with tools and hand, and the shape is crafted solely through the memory and skill of the craftsman. Very, very skilled process, and that's what makes the price go up, of course. The person who made this teapot, her name is Ying Chunfang. She is a level 2 Zisha tea craftsperson, which means she has over 15 years of experience making Zisha. Her work has been collected by the Shubei Hong Museum, so she's got credit, she's got reputation, she has accolades to her name, and therefore we are more trusting in what she has to say. Again, we cannot verify everything that she has said to us, but she is well established as a young and upcoming artist. The reason why we don't go to level 4s and level 5s is the prices are so exorbitant for those. If you're talking about a level 3, 4, 5 clay teaware master, the prices are through the roof. There is no point, from our point of view, sourcing from those people right now. Level 2, 15 years of experience. We love her work. I really think that she has done an amazing job with this teaware. So there you go. It's from Huang Long Shan, supposedly, from Zerni ores. It's been fermented and aged for 30 years. It's been fully handmade by a level 2 craftswoman who has got a reputation. She's in her 40s. She's up and coming. That's relatively young in the clay teaware game, but she is up and coming, and we think she has enough reputation that we can take a lot of what she says at face value. However, again, most important thing here is the quality of the performance of the clay, and that's what we want to test today, and that's why we are going to be testing it against our other teaware, including another Yixing clay teaware, and we're going to be overclocking or overbrewing or over extracting Canopy Flasher. I've done a video about Canopy Flasher. This is a Gushu Raw PuErh from Nanluo, one of my favorite mountains in Yunnan province. The reason why we've selected this tea is because it is feisty. It's a fruity, feisty little animal, this one here. And therefore, it will very, very much benefit from some attenuation of the astringency and potential bitterness in the tea. So for those of you who don't know, the reason why clay is used for brewing tea is not just because of the looks, not just because of the nice tactile quality of clay, but because of a couple of things. The first is the heat retention, so the ability to hold heat for longer. And second reason is because the minerals in the clay, which is porous, interacts with the tea and softens astringency, rounds out astringency, rounds out bitterness, and therefore you can brew stronger extractions of a tea which is a little bit feisty like this one, and you can get strong flavorful brews without having too much astringency and bitterness. But the compromise is always that, just like in EQ of music, if you increase the bass, if you increase the roundness and softness of a tea, you are going to potentially shift the balance out, and you're going to lose some of those bright, high, top end notes. And different clays have different interactions. As I said, I've done a video before about this. I'll put a link in the description below. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to break open this cake, and I'm going to brew the same amount of tea Gong Fu style, so probably around 5 grams of tea per 100 ml of water. We're going to heat up the teaware first. We're going to put the leaves in, and then we're going to be brewing them instead of for 20 seconds, 25 seconds, which is our recommendation. We are going to be overclocking this brewing. We're going to be brewing for 2.5 minutes. So that's over 7 times the recommended brewing time. And the reason for that is I want to see the performance of this clay. I want to see how well it rounds out the astringency and bitterness, because you can betcha at that level of infusion time, we are going to extract some bitterness and astringency. We want to see the performance, and we want to see how it preserves those top notes. So I'm going to get brewing and I'll be right back. Here they all are from Gaiwan porcelain, Chaozhou clay, we've got Zhenshui clay, we've got our half handmade, much younger Yixing clay, and then we've got our Junda fully handmade clay teapot made with 30-year-old Lao Zini clay, supposedly mined from Huang Long Mountain. Let's take a look at these liquors. Pretty similar, but definitely already I see, I don't know if you can, but I see that this is lighter. Why don't I compare the two Yixings? That's probably a fairer comparison. So the fully handmade versus the half handmade, you can see that this one here is definitely lighter. So therefore you can immediately tell that with the same tea, same parameters, everything identical, the clay is having an effect on the extraction. Right, I need to move relatively quickly because I don't want these to oxidize. So let's go. This is the Gaiwan. Wow. Woo. Okay, so this is overbrewed intentionally, okay? Whenever I'm writing tasting notes, I tend to be, you probably noticed this, the tea heads amongst you, I tend to be a little bit more conservative with my brewing time. I tend to recommend shorter brewing times. That's not necessarily the way that I would brew the tea. I tend to overclock or overbrew a little bit more because I like a bit more punch and extraction, but I find from speaking to people and understanding people's tastes, I prefer to err on the side of caution regarding brewing times and regarding how many infusions, maximum infusions I think you can get out of a tea. Usually we're very conservative. It's actually usually the minimum number of extractions you can get out of the tea. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point here is that I'm used to over-extracted tea, or tea which I think is stronger and gives more punch because I like it, but this is extremely bitter. Very, very bitter. Okay, that bitterness transforms because it's a very high quality tea, and I'm getting tons and tons of fruit. I'm getting lots of brightness, very, very toppy, tons of brightness. I'm getting zest, I'm getting orange, I'm getting a little bit of that grapefruit pith, a lot of that grapefruit pith. I'm getting some funky herbal note going on. I'm getting mangosteens and durians. I'm getting lots of brightness, but wow, that bitterness is very, very, very strong. Too strong for me. Now, let's move on to the Chaozhou clay. Chaozhou clay, usually reserved for Dansong, so more delicate teas. It is going to be preserving more of the top notes because of the fact that it's higher fired, thinner, less porous. Let's see. Again, bitterness. Very similar to this one. Very similar. The bitterness is, it's just uncomfortable. It does transform and I get a lot of fruitiness, but whoa, it's very, very strong extractions of tea. Far too bitter for me. So that's the Chaozhou, as expected. Right, now we're moving into Zhenshui. Zhenshui is a very nice clay, really, really suited for lots of different teas. Let's see how it's affected this overclocked tea. For sure softer, for sure smoother, for sure The bitterness has been rounded, but it is still extreme. Not as extreme as these ones, but it's still extreme. And top notes are noticeably shaved, only a little bit, but they are shaved. I'm getting less of those bright high canopy notes that we love with the canopy flasher. Right, now we're moving into Yixing Zisha territory. This is our half handmade. So much softer, thicker texture. Bitterness is now very manageable. Definitely soft, definitely less bitterness. It's still a bitter tea, but definitely much less, a world of difference compared to these ones. But no doubt about it, those top notes have been shaved off quite considerably. It's like I'm getting all of the mid-range and the base of the tea, but I'm not getting the brightness. I'm not getting that sort of Asian pear. I'm not getting the grapefruits. I'm not getting the zest. It's like an echo of itself. It's not really truly present. Now finally, the fully handmade Junda teaware. Let's see what it does. I have not done this test before. I've been brewing with this teapot a lot and I've been amazed at how it handles tea, but I've not done this before, and noticeably the liquor is so much brighter and clearer. Unbelievable. And this is what I'm always getting when I'm brewing with this. I feel like I just keep wanting to push it and push it and push it because it can just take it. It just takes it and handles it. This tea here, it has some bitterness, but it is, like, I would say, something in the region of about 20% of the bitterness of these brews here. Really, really soft, really, really thick, really, really clean tasting. The minerality really supports the tea, adds structure to the tea. And this is the kicker here, what I am blown away by is not just that this clay can handle long extractions, can give you strong, tea drunk, potent tea shots whilst controlling the bitterness. The real kicker for me is that the brightness is preserved so amazingly. I can still taste all of the brightness that I could taste in, say, the Chaozhou. Maybe if I compare back to back the porcelain. It's very hard to get past that bitterness. It's extreme. It's just unbelievable that this is the same tea brewed in the same way, same parameters, everything identical. That's very, very drinkable. I'd be super happy to drink that tea. I don't have any problem with that level of bitterness. It's strong, but it's how I like it. And the zestiness, the oranginess in the finish, but also it's maintained and allowed those warmer notes like the toffee notes, the creamy notes of the tea to come forward too. You know, this is like putting your tea through the most expensive compressor, valve compressor in a studio. It just amplifies everything that you love about the tea. It increases the weight, it increases the body, it increases the warmth of the tea, but it still has brightness, it still has clarity, it still has detail. Incredible. I really am just blown away by this teapot. I'm going to just do a back-to-back against the half handmade. The half handmade, definitely less top notes. The bitterness is attenuated, but this one attenuates the bitterness even more. So this is a great teapot for those sort of introduction to Zisha. You want your first Zisha clay teapot. This is great. This one here, this is for those who really want to step up to the next level. And I have to say that this Junda teapot has quickly become my go-to teapot for Shang PuErh, for Raw PuErh. It is suited for lots of different types of tea. I would even suggest that because it can preserve the brightness of a tea, you could even use it for dansongs and other teas like that. I leave it up to you if you would like to use this as an all-star pot, or if you would like to use it as a single teapot. I am reserving this for my Raw PuErhs. Let's quickly brew up one with this so you can see it in action. If you didn't see me brewing, I'm just going to move all this out of the way. These brews are far too bitter. This one, just about manageable, but this one here, I am very happy to drink. Let's brew up with this. 130 ml, great size. We're going to ramp up the temperature of the water a little bit. The Junda shape, I love the shape of this, the Junda shape, because it allows a lot of room at the base of this pot for expansion, and just a really lovely shape. Okay, we've got hot water here. In goes the water. I'm not going to fill it to the top because I don't have a water tray here with me today, so I don't want any spillage. Lovely design, fully handmade by Ying Chunfang. Right, I'm going to brew a more sensible time now, maybe 25, 30 seconds. The great thing about this teapot and what I'm using it for so much is just seeing how strong I can get the extraction without it compromising on flavor. And I'm sort of testing it and testing it and testing it. The great thing, of course, is that you get very strong brews that really, really give you a full assessment of the character of the tea. Look at that pour. Lovely, lovely arced pour, but not too much of an arc. And, of course, the psychoactive effects of the tea become even more pronounced because you're able to drink these very, very strong shots, full of flavor, full of effect, without that eye-wincing bitterness. There you go. A more sensible brew. I don't know what that was. That was probably about 45 seconds. Cheers, everybody. So bright. This is what's amazing about this. So bright. When I'm drinking with Yixing, and the Yixing clay teapots that we've been sampling over the years, as I said, we've been buying in Yixing clay teapots. Some of them have been very, very good. But the reason why this one stopped me in my tracks and I selected it is because the quality of the clay just shines. It's amazing how it preserves those top notes while rounding out the bitterness and astringency. We only have 14 of these little babies in stock, fully handmade by Ying Chunfang. I tell you, immediately has become one of my favorite go-to pots in my own collection, and I highly recommend if you want to test really high quality clay, then this is the sucker for you. Is it because it comes from Huang Long Mountain? Is it because it's been fermented and aged for over 30 years? I cannot tell you any of that for sure. All I know is that it makes tea which tastes damn good. That's it, tea heads. Check out our other videos. Fire over any questions, comments, or video ideas. Come and see us if you're ever in London by visiting our tea house in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the good stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.